Welcome to White Shadow Fare, where I'm making it homemade and I'm making it with love. Today I'm making a super easy beginner sourdough bread. You only have 4 ingredients here: active freshly fed starter, bread, flour or all-purpose flour, water, and salt. Here are your must-have items. You need a large bowl. If you're new to sourdough, don't let it intimidate you. It's not that difficult. A food scale is a must if you're going to be doing sourdough baking. Also, figure out if you're going to be using a baking sheet or a Dutch oven. The easiest way to get started is to find an actively fed starter from a friend that is already making sourdough, or make your own sourdough starter from scratch. Something to help you mix the dough. I know some people use chopsticks. I used to use just a butter knife. A small bowl with a tea towel, some parchment paper, a sharp knife for scoring that dough, and an oven, of course, for baking. So let's get started with the recipe. Now, the night before you want to bake your bread, place your large bowl on that scale, and you are going to measure out exactly 500 grams of flour. Now, it's very important that you measure everything exactly right. If you've never baked using a scale before, it is a game changer. If you follow all of the instructions exactly as written, your recipe will come out identical every single time. So here you can see that I am adding the salt. Once again, remember my bowl is on a scale, so I'm measuring out 9 grams of salt, and you can use any kind of salt that you want. That's just what I have on hand. And here's where I got the recipe. It's called Artisan Sourdough Made Simple by Emily Raffa. It's an excellent book, but her everyday sourdough recipe is as beginner friendly as I've ever seen. So that's the recipe that I'm using here. Now, I'm certainly not an expert with sourdough, but this is the easiest loaf I've ever made. In your small bowl, you are going to add your starter. Now, my starter is going to look a lot different than most people's because it is 100% whole wheat. That's just the starter that I prefer to make. So mine's darker and thicker. Remember, everybody's starter looks different, so don't worry about what it looks like on the screen. And to that, you are going to add 350 grams of room temperature water. Now, you are going to mix the water and the starter together, and then you are going to pour that into your flour and salt mixture. And here I am just simply using a wooden spoon. I'm using the handle end of it, and I am stirring this to the best of my ability, getting all of that flour incorporated. It's a very thick, shaggy looking dough. And then in a second here, I am going to pull that out, and I'm going to use a spatula, but you don't have to. Now, some people prefer to mix using their hand. I don't like to do that because it gets all over my hands, and it's just a lot easier and cleaner for me anyway to use something like a butter knife or the end of a wooden spoon. All right, so I'm gathering the dough together, and then I'm going to cover it up and just let it sit on my counter overnight. It needs to sit out for 8 to 10 hours. So that's easy. Go to bed. When you get up in the morning, it's going to be ready for you to do the next step. So this is what my dough looked like on the day that I am baking. So in the morning, first thing, I can see that my dough is very relaxed. Time to do the pre-shape. So I am spreading out quite a bit of flour here, because this is a wet, sticky dough, and it's probably the first time you've ever made this dough, but I can see that I'm going to be making this recipe quite often because it was so easy. So I sprinkle some flour on top, and I'm going to get my dough into a rectangle shape to the best of my ability, but being very gentle with the dough. Then I'm going to do what is called a letter fold. That is just folding each side in. Then I'm going to roll it up like a log. And then finally, I'm going to pull it into a nice dough ball. I'm going to cover that with a tea towel and let it sit and rest for 15 to 20 minutes. That is called the pre-shape. I'm going to grab that small bowl and put my tea towel in there, and I am sprinkling rice flour in there, but regular flour works as well. That's what I used when I first started, was regular flour. And once again, after it sat for 15 to 20 minutes, you are going to do the same steps again. Get it into a rectangle, do the letter fold, go ahead and roll it into a log, and then get it pulled into a nice tight ball, and put that in the good side of your bread. The side that you're going to be baking should be down in the bowl, and then the bottom of your bread is sticking up right now. And you're going to fold the tea towel over it and stick this in the refrigerator for at least 2 hours. So about 30 minutes before you want to bake, you're going to start preheating your oven to 450 degrees. Now, if you are using a Dutch oven, something with a lid, have that inside the oven already. It should be preheating as well. So you're going to turn your dough out onto the parchment paper, and now you can see that the pretty top side is there. You are going to use your sharp knife and you are going to score that loaf of bread by making a slice from one side all the way to the other. You're going to place this into your baking vessel or on your baking pan and stick it in the oven for 30 minutes with the cover on. Then you'll take the cover off and you'll bake it for an additional 20 minutes. Now, if you are just using a baking sheet, you're going to drop the oven temperature down to 425 once you have gotten it into the oven. Close the door and drop the temperature down. And here's what my loaf looks like when it came out. This is the first time I've ever used this recipe. I'm sticking this on a cooling rack and I'm going to let it cool for a minimum of 2 hours. And you can see how much this rose. It makes the perfect loaf for dinner. And as you can see, it's crunchy on the outside. It's nice and soft on the inside. I hope that you will give this a try. Thank you for joining me here at White Shadow Fair.